Hello and welcome to This Is Not Sunday School, where we discuss religious ideas that don't belong in Sunday school. Last week, my friend's son asked the age-old question. Here we go. You ready for this? If God is all-powerful, which we have a word for that, it's omnipotent, potent meaning powerful, omni meaning all. Can he create a boulder? If God is all-powerful, can he create a boulder so heavy he cannot lift it? So let's talk about this. So this kind of religious or philosophical or there's many of them in many different walks of life. It's called a paradox, and there are many paradoxes. Like I said, in physics, math, philosophy, and like we're talking about today, religion. This one even has a fancy name, this specific paradox. It's called the omnipotent paradox. It also has another one. I'm trying to remember what it was called. But let's talk about paradoxes for a second. Is that how you say the plural of paradoxes? Anyways, my Latin's not good. So in other words, in math, if something seems... Okay, hold on. Let me back up here. So we're going to talk about... the way math looks at paradoxes. So two things that seem to contradict each other. And like this, that God could be, he can create anything, right? So can he create a boulder so strong he can lift it? But if he can't lift it, then he's not all powerful anymore. So a mathematical paradox is any statement or set of statements that seem to contradict itself or each other while simultaneously seeming completely logical. So it seems, religiously logical that if God is all-powerful, he can do anything he wants. But if he can do anything he wants, then couldn't he create something that would stop him from being all-powerful? So in math, a paradox is only a wrong statement, at least mathematical paradox, is only a wrong statement that seems right because of a lack of essential logic or information or application of logic to a situation where it is not applicable. And I love this because I think it points out that a paradox is only a paradox because we don't have all the information, or we're applying it wrong, or there's just some level of lack of understanding on our part. Basically, if it's a paradox, it's a good indication that we've made a mistake in our logic, or we're applying it incorrectly. So in other words, in math, if something seems illogical or paradoxical, it is because we don't understand on a deep enough level. So the concept of omnipotence, of being all-powerful, delves into a couple of other topics that deserve their own episodes, namely eternal progression, which is on my list, and simulation theory. Both of those are on my list. But I wanted to briefly touch on them just so we can discuss omnipotence as they relate to being all-powerful. So I've made simple video games before, and as the creator, if you will, of those video games, I had complete power over that video game. I could get down to the code level, to the point I could control anything about that video game or simulation. I could move things, I could create things, I could delete things, I could change anything. Anyway, I could break my own rules in the video game. And to a character in the video game, if they had consciousness, let's use our imaginations for a second, then if somebody was able to do that, that would be like a god to them. So that's how it delves a little bit into simulation theory. So if you think about it, that, I'm all powerful. Could I create a boulder in that game so big that I couldn't lift it? Well, it doesn't completely make sense because I'm not in the video game. I have complete control over it, so I am omnipotent. Could I create... I could create errors in the video game where things just don't make sense. But even then, I have power to do that. It's not like I'm forced to. So that's something to think about and ponder a little bit. To the video game avatar, in their narrow understanding, and even in the narrow capability of comprehension limited by what they are, I would be omnipotent. So to those video game characters, even though in this world that we exist in right now, it's completely different. They couldn't even comprehend it. Those avatars would think I'm omnipotent in their world, which is true, even though I'm not a god, right? But to them, I would be. In that game, I could create a boulder so big that the best video game avatar couldn't lift it. So, sure. Does it affect my omnipotence? Nope. Not in any way. There's no way they could stop me from being omnipotent in that video game. So, how does this apply to, us? Well, and that's why it touches on, can God progress, or is he already perfect? I think in our world, to our comprehension, to our ability to understand, he's already perfect. And, the simulation theory gets into, are we, kind of like in God's video game? But we'll address those topics later because they deserve their own episode. So to kind of show that scripturally this is supported, not simulation theory, not whether or not God can progress, we'll handle that later, but to support the idea that God's ways are so much higher than our ways that we can't comprehend them, we'll go to the scriptures. And Isaiah 55, 8-9 says, this is a common scripture, "For my thoughts," meaning God's thoughts, "are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord." Meaning his ways are so different than ours that they're just not comparable. His thoughts are way, way more capable than our thoughts. Verse 9, "For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." So it's not hard to, imagine that God lives in some kind of place, which we describe as heaven, that's just so incomprehensible to us that we don't even have the capability to comprehend it. In fact, in Doctrine and Covenants, that's what God says in D&C 78, verse 17-18. He says, "Very verily, verily," this is God speaking, "I say unto you, ye are little children, and ye have not as yet understood how great blessings the Father hath in his own hands and prepared for you. You cannot bear all things now. Nevertheless, be of good cheer, for I will lead you along." So, and he was talking to Joseph Smith, who was at such a pinnacle of spirituality, far beyond anything I'll ever reach in this mortal existence, along with most people, if not all. They said that Joseph Smith is the greatest man since Jesus Christ. So, yeah, second place. I don't think anybody else is going to steal that second place. God called them children. He's like, you guys can't understand how great the blessings I have for you. You can't comprehend it. You can't bear it. So, and there are other scriptures that talk about how if God appears and we aren't transfigured, changed, that it would destroy us. He's so much above our physical and mental and spiritual capabilities to comprehend even, that we are like little children. So, the question then going back to kind of tie this all up. Can God create an object so large that he cannot lift it? Again, the question itself is kind of a paradox because we don't have the ability to comprehend infinity. We don't have the ability to comprehend omnipotent at the level that God is at. So to me, the better question is, if he could create a boulder so heavy that he couldn't lift it, would we be able to comprehend that concept? Which obviously, because it's a paradox, the answer is no, we can't comprehend it. Another thing to mention is that there are some philosophies and religions that focus a lot on paradox. Which is pretty cool if you ask me. One of these is Taoism. I really like Taoism. I don't worship it as a religion, but I do subscribe to many of its philosophies, and I'm not alone, as I'm about to show you. But they brought us this symbol of, you could say, paradox, which is the yin-yang. It could be considered a symbol of paradox. And Lehi talks about concepts that are discussed in Taoism, believe it or not, in the scriptures in 2 Nephi 2. One of my personal favorite scriptures about paradox. He goes on into his Taoist, I call them his Taoist writings, and explains that without opposites, nothing would exist. So here it says, quote, it must needs be that there is an opposition in all things. If not so, my firstborn in the wilderness, righteousness could not be brought to pass, neither wickedness, neither holiness, nor misery, neither good nor bad. Wherefore all things must need be a compound in one. Wherefore, if it should be one body, it must needs remain as dead, having no life, neither death, nor corruption, nor incorruption, happiness, nor misery, neither sense nor insensibility. There has to be an opposite in all things. You can't have black without white. You can't have good without evil. You can't have God without the devil. So, yeah. And when I say can't have, I mean, what Lehi is saying, those things wouldn't even exist. It'd be as if they're dead, meaning, they're not there. So according to the ideas expressed in the paradox, according to Lehi, or expressed in the paradox that you asked about, can God create a boulder so heavy that he cannot lift it? That paradox wouldn't even exist without its paradox. The concept of omnipotence and the lack thereof wouldn't even exist without that paradox to kind of make us think about it. So anyway, something to ponder. It was a great question. Let me know if that's a satisfying answer. Hopefully I gave you a lot to think about, and let me know if you have more questions or if you come up with better ideas around that, or just tell me if it's terrible and I'm wrong, and we can discuss. My next week's discussion is going to be on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Islam. So my daughter asked, why do Muslims believe in the Prophet Muhammad? And I don't know. So I'm going to have to do me some research. I'm going to have to search it up a little bit. I know a little about this, but it'll be interesting to discuss. And add any questions that you have about Islam, and I'll try to add them to the discussion. So thanks for joining, and I will see you next week.